we've been waiting a long time for the federal government. We've been playing this game since March, asking desperately for the federal government to help New York in all of its dire financial needs. And there have been some successes early on, but very few recently. Are there any other avenues that you've discussed with the MTA board or others about raising the requisite revenue so that we do not have an operating death spiral? My fear is that, if we are trying to revive New York's economy or get people back to school, if suddenly the MTA again reduces service further on subway or bus lines, like you suggested, it will become so much harder to pull ourselves out of this rut.
So, Assemblymember, the COVID-19 pandemic is an international issue. It's a national issue. It requires a national solution. The federal government, as you suggested, did provide $3.9 billion in the CARES Act. That was important funding. We exhausted that in the middle of July. We were the first public transit agency in the country to exhaust its funding because our revenue declines, tolls and fares and subsidy payments have been so depressed. Given the financial situation of the state, and I will defer to all of you as legislators and policymakers at the state level, but given the financial situation of the state and the city, both of which are appropriately asking for help from the federal government it would be, first, we welcome any revenue from any source. But it would be inappropriate, and I believe under the circumstances, to expect the state or the city to come to the MTA's rescue. And the only level of government that has the capacity to do that is the federal government, as it did on the first round of CARES funding. And it is absolutely essential that we get $12 billion of funding. I want to also just briefly echo Chair Kennedy's remark, which is that the reason to do this is obviously to save the New York City, to save the MTA, but it's also in the national interest to do this, given so much of the nation's gross domestic product is generated here in the region, nearly 10% of that.
Before my time runs out, Chair Foye, I want to make the point that, there is a federal election happening in November. There may be big changes in DC come January, but that's a long time for New Yorkers who are holding on to their businesses, their homes, their schools to be waiting. What can we do now? Either by looking at the capital budget, looking at new revenue sources so that we can get ourselves past this period. Because I don't think you're going to see any political changes or choices being made between August 25th and November 4th. And that's a long time.